Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome back. This is another episode of the ChatGTM podcast. I am your insane host, Mr. Michael Beck, and joined with me, as always, is my less insane counterpart, co-host, and business partner, Mr. Chad Horn. Chad, how you be today, sir?
I just hide my crazy Beck.
You do hide your crazy. Those are the people you have to worry about. And so this is a really interesting show for me today personally. This is actually what I call cathartic moment. So I want to say 15 years ago or so, I'll have to ask the author who's sitting here, and I'm acting like he's not here at the moment. I'll introduce him in a second. I walked into a dark room at a trade show, and there was this nutty guy on stage, and he was loud, and he had hair, and he had energy and vibe and swagger. And I didn't know it was Guy Fieri that untinted his hair, but I think this guy's got a little bit more going on. And so the person I'm really excited to introduce to you, the guy who influenced my life greatly over the last 15 years and probably didn't know it, Mr. Jim Knight, author of Culture That Rocks, and a number of other books we're going to talk about today. Jim, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Dude, I am so excited. I'm not sure I've had that type of a introduction before, but I'm pretty sure it's all positive. I'm going to take it.
It's
But
all positive. Absolutely. I like different for different sake, and you are different, my friend. Like you,
thank you, brother.
in the
I appreciate
absolute best
you.
way.
And I was loud. There's no doubt about it. I'm probably loud and aggressive and just crazy when I'm up on stage. A little bit of performance art. I'm usually not as intense with what we're doing here, but I have no doubt that if in fact it was 15 years ago, I was super loud at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I built a business on some of the things I learned from you there, and one of it is pattern interruption or version of pattern interruption, which is you're just drastically different, and I love drastically different. In fact, in business, there's so many times, especially in software and hospitality, we hear all the time, "How much is it?" Because you guys are all the same. Like, and so why am I excited? Well, this is a guy that is not the same. He is uniquely his own thing. And I love you for who you are, Jim. I love you for what you've done for our industry. I love that you bring people around. And I love you because you build on foundations of culture. And if you have great culture, the rest of it just kind of goes. I always it says thing about culture, terroir. Are you familiar with the term?
Not, no.
So in viniculture, when you grow wine, right, and you are all sitting around that table, and they got that $100 bottle. They're talking about, oh yes, the notes of the earth and the tone. And this
Yes.
year was a good year. That's called terroir. It's all the things around that grape that make it delicious and beautiful. And culture is the terroir of business. It's the thing that makes everything else so sweet and nice
I
and
love that.
complex and delicious. And you are the terroir of culture. So
Man,
yeah,
that's like the mitochondria in Star
I'm
Wars. Same thing. Everything.
midichlorians.
There we go. We just went
Yeah,
deep.
keep,
Okay,
keep,
I'm with
keep,
you though. I got you.
keep cuts. So Jim, let's get going. It's been 15 years. What you been up to?
I was born a very small child, 15 years ago, man. Well, first off, I'll say I ran training and development for Hard Rock International. So 15 years ago, I was still working for the brand. I left them in 2012. 13 years ago, I was working for the man, and then went off on my own. So in that last decade and a half, I've been trying to make my mark in really just helping out businesses. And I thought, to be honest with you, that it would really be more in food and beverage because that was my background predominantly. Couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, most of the gigs that I get a chance to do and on some big stages are technology and healthcare and insurance and banking. Funeral directors are some of my biggest clients. So if somebody is going to have a conference, and every industry has conferences, they all have associations and many at that. There's always going to be an outside speaker that they're going to bring in. It used to be they'd bring in 2 or 3 speakers, but I think since the pandemic, they've sort of reduced the amount of dollars they're going to spend on people. Most of the time they're going to use internal facilitators, but that's really where I've been focusing my energy is just impacting and influencing organizations. And sometimes, like yourself, we get a chance to hobnob and get to meet each other personally. And if it resonates with somebody individually and I wind up having a friendship or maybe even a business relationship or some philanthropic angle, I love that as well. But I'm trying to do as much as I possibly can with the masses. As many people that I can have in front of me is just my jam. And I absolutely love it. Where I know that it is probably one of the biggest fears of most humans on this planet is to speak in front of others. I actually crave it. I'm looking for it all day long. So, in a nutshell, that's me in the last 15 years. I've written a couple books. I've had a podcast, and it's since gone away. So I feel like I'm getting back into those, the opportunity to see somebody from a distance and spend some time with them, and to meet Chad, of course.
Chad, I think you
Well,
just teed you up.
I Jim, that's a long time that you've been speaking, and you talk about culture and customer service and employee engagement and a variety of other things that relate, right? Leadership, I can't miss that one either. And I'm curious, what do you love talking about the most, and how has that changed, if it has?
I would say if I had to really guess, at all of those, I love depending on whatever the organization wants, I'll go deep or I'll go broad. And if they're like, listen, it's going to be an hour over lunch, that's one mentality. If they're like, I need a half an hour and I've got to change my company and I need you to bring a heavier stick with these general managers or whatever it is, I like that just as much. But out of the topics that you mentioned, probably culture. And I would say that because, I worked for one of the greatest cultures in the history of cultures. I mean, the Hard Rock brand at that time when I was there was unstoppable. These guys were producing Herculean results. We were printing our own money. When I started, we didn't have any competitors. Not really, not at that level and that scale. And that was the busiest restaurant in the world that I started at. So, when I started, my hair did not go up like it is now. It went down, Michael. I had a long mullet. It would be 2.5 feet. I could almost sit on my hair at two different times.
Party in the
Eh,
back?
party in the back, business in the front. And I think just the time that I spent there, I fell madly in love with the people that were there, which I equate to really being the culture. It really became its own personality. Every property was its own subculture, but not only living in that world. I do have a music degree. I did spend 6 years as a middle school teacher. I have a little bit of diversity and I pull the levers of music education and hospitality because I was there for so long. But just being ensconced in the middle of such an unbelievable brand, which in my mind was the island of misfit toys. It was all the freaks that weren't loved somewhere else. They found a home on this island. And what you get with that is loyalty. And the longer that they stayed, the greater the results. And so, coming back around to your question, I love not only working for that culture, but then you start to think about why can't other companies do this? And for me to go and write books about it or stand on a stage and talk about it, and now to actually go underneath the grill and study some of the greatest cultures on the planet in other industries instead of just one industry, I'm going vertical in others. I guess probably, and my bread and butter will forever be culture because I think maybe they want to hire me for that association with that particular brand that I worked with for 2 decades. But now I feel like I've sort of have outgrown that a little bit more because now I can pull from so many other industries and prove culture is the linchpin. And again, if I'm going back to root causes, it's the humans that are working there. Depending on whoever's in the business at that time, that is the organizational culture. And every time somebody leaves or joins, the culture changes immediately. So I've focused on that a lot. And quite honestly, even the stuff when I'm talking about leadership, like you said, or building teams or employee engagement, they all go back to culture. If you focus on all these, I'm in the everything is culture camp. So I probably picked that one. And that's probably why 60, 70% of all the engagements that I do are on culture. Now, once I spend that time with the company, they might want to go into some of the others. But first and foremost, I probably get that request more than anything else.
So I
Makes
got a
sense.
question about that, Jim, and so it's funny when you talk about culture, it's a group dynamic, right? But also boils down to individuals that create culture, right? And you said somewhere it was what was you said about the power of one, right? That well, one person can spark a revolution or some version of that, right? Can you give me a little bit of a story, like how in your career where you saw that actually ignite, where you saw somebody, and whether it's yourself or someone else, how they sparked that, and then that spread to the business and helped it grow?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a bunch of examples. I think almost anybody who has started from the ground up in a company and they ultimately have taken on more responsibilities, got into a leadership role, things that used to maybe be in their circle of influence, which is very small, instead of getting freaked out on all the things you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about terrorism or the weather or what my boss does or anybody else around me. So I'm going to live my life in that circle of influence. And ultimately that grows because people see that you kept your cool. You actually are producing big fat W's in everything that you do. You wind up taking on more responsibilities and the things that you used to not have any control. That's how influence works. You get promoted. And ultimately, if you're running the joint or if you start your own company and you're a founder, then you make massive, broad impact and influence. So you can almost think of anybody who started off somewhere who ultimately broke out of that to do their own thing or run the company. That's a clear indication of somebody who probably had to break a few things along the way. I'm a big fan of if it isn't broken, break it. I absolutely am looking for opportunities to make it better. So the quote that you were saying, I love it. It's, because it's my own quote, which is weird to quote myself, but I really do believe a single person with a great idea can start a revolution. That's how companies are thrown from a cultural standpoint. That's how countries get overthrown by one person that starts that revolution. That's how philanthropic movements are started, like some of the work you're doing. It has to require somebody to go, this could be better. How do we do that? And if you sit back and all you're doing is responding to all the stimulus, what my boss says, what operations has told me, what society is telling me to do. And
The
if
news is telling me,
there are
yeah.
people that are happy to do that. Yeah, they'll salute smartly and they'll do it. And by the way, we need people like that. But we're short in the world and in this country with entrepreneurs. We need way more people to start organizations. And I think there have to be some people that will break out of that. I'll use my own example. I was a host. I started off as a host, like I said, with the long hair. I'm working in the busiest restaurant in the world. I told the guy who was doing the orientation, I go, listen, what you get with me is I'm going to be a super host. I don't even want to be a tipped employee. I don't want to live off of tips. I don't really even want to be a manager, but I'm going to be the best, most well-paid host that you're ever going to have in the whole company. Put me up front, coach. So I'm up there and I'm touching 7,000 people a day. Again, busiest restaurant in the world. We're pumping $35,000 hours, which is unheard of in the restaurant world. Even the Orlando Hard Rock today will do about $40 million. It's a restaurant. So when you work in that environment, your head gets big, your skills get sharp, right? I'm just having fun. I'm loving life, but ultimately somebody wants to make me a trainer to do what I'm doing. Okay, I'll do that. My influence just grew, right?
Sure.
Now I'm doing training. That's fun. Every manager in the world that worked at Hard Rock at that time had to come to Orlando. So now every time I teach, I'm actually teaching myself. So my skills are getting sharper. Now they want me to go do openings. So now I get a chance to go and work in Paris and London, and I'm opening up Hard Rocks in Madrid and Macau, China, and Penang, Malaysia, and wherever. So now you have a global view and your skills are just getting better all the time. So ultimately, they want to make you a manager. So as things just started to progress, again, I was there for 21 years. When I was there for half the time that the company had ever been around. I'm just a host. I'm just a guy with long hair. I love that, I got to look and say and be and do and work in an environment where 90 decibels of Zeppelin are blaring in my ear and I could touch Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein guitar. Like just the fun of it, being in that sensory mosh pit, if you will, was amazing to me. But when I step away from the brand over 2 decades later and go, I made impact, I made influence. I trained every manager in the entire company at that time, people that I now have friendships from around the world. That there's something about that. And I think the people like that, the Elon Musk, the Charlie Kirks of the world, who again, they start something on their own and ultimately they're doing things that are going to make more money or more impact and influence than anybody else on the planet. I think those are people that I just love to admire. And not that I need to be that guy. I just want to be able to influence people positively. So I'm hoping that I've had a chance to do that. I know that's a long answer.
That's okay. And I have one thing to marry on to that before we hand over to the chat on this one. So thinking about that and thinking about people that might be sitting on that great idea, right? What you talked about before, there's a layer of bravery that comes to this, or give a
Totally.
F, right? Or whatever it is. But what advice would you give to somebody that's sitting on an idea and is hesitant to get it out there?
Man, you got to get past the hesitation. You got to get it out there. And it might be maybe bouncing off a couple people. I think maybe some upward delegation, having a conversation with your boss.
Yeah.
I think sometimes going, listen, this is what I ultimately want to be doing. Can you help me get there? Enlist them as a champion. And if they say no and they're happy with you doing what you're doing, ultimately you got to make a decision. And it might not be with a company, it might be doing a little bit of an end run around, which I don't recommend. I've had my butt handed to me when that's happened. But this is how entrepreneurs and founders think. If you've got a great idea, you are going to hate yourself when you're 70, 80, 90 years old going, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, and looked back. And you would have been just always regretting that. Maybe you had an awesome life, but that one idea could have been the difference between ultimately success and failure for you and your family and your friends or whatever, or even helping other people out from around the planet. So I get it, but nowadays, with the advent of AI, with there are so many organizations, EO groups, YPO groups that are literally built to help foster people to go out there and run with their ideas, there really shouldn't be an excuse. I know there is. I know there's a hesitation. I say you just got to buckle up, man. Put on your big boy, big girl pants, and at least get the ball rolling. It might ultimately fail, but most entrepreneurs fail many times before that success actually happens anyway.
So I am excited to see how you answer this question, Jim, because you seem like the perfect person to ask it. And it's this thing that's been bothering me. I've seen it more and more on LinkedIn.
Is about
Oh,
hair care products?
it's not.
Oh,
So
shoot.
these class of people who, reach a point of experience in their careers, and they're offering their sound advice, which goes something like this, and some variation of like, your employer doesn't care about you.
Uh-huh.
You have to manage your own career because they sure as heck won't. HR is your enemy. You take care of yourself. Pre-negotiate your severance. Yada 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 yada. Of these types of things where it's like making it like it's you versus them. Oh, and by the way, you keep doing this, you'll have that opportunity to take your own shot, become an entrepreneur, and then be your own boss, and then quote unquote problem solved. And I am thinking as I'm reading these things, okay, so you start your own company. Are you going to be now the company people work for and say this stuff and think of this stuff about you? Right? Where bridge the gap for us in terms of the value and the around being an entrepreneur, right? Recognizing solving a problem in a new way, and being a part of building something that others can and want to and should follow, like be a part of an organization and be a part of a team, even if it's not your baby, right? To do something meaningful in the world versus this very binary view I see a lot.
Yeah. Well, I definitely stay away from that binary view. And I think as you were setting up the question, I certainly don't think it's just about people that are starting their own company, the founders, the entrepreneurs. I would say any leader in any company, the mindset should be the same. Founders are just a little bit off, and they are allowed to be. And instead of everybody trying to change them, we ought to be leaning into that and following their wisdom and their crazydom, because they ultimately, you're going to learn a ton, by the way, but you'll probably be successful following in their wake. But I would say most people that are listening to the show aren't going to be in that camp. What they can be is once they take on responsibilities, and let's say they're leading an organization, or they're just maybe a shift manager and they're managing a certain amount of people at a given point in time. I think the mindset is exactly the same. It's not so much, let me go find some representation. I'm an anti-union type guy. So there's going to be people that are throwing stuff right now at the screen. But the reality is, I think that companies could be so awesome that you don't need a union to come in as a middle person between the ownership and the leaders and the people that are working the front lines. I think that there could be such a love affair between the two that you don't need to go and run somewhere else and say, oh, we need help. I think there should be ultimately open conversation. So I think part of your question is really about, how can I as a leader get into the mindset of how can I get every single person to fall madly in love with the brand or with my leadership skills, that they can't fathom leaving and going somewhere else. If they were to do that, they'd be basically cheating on me, that they would feel guilty about it, that they have just they've immersed themselves in such an environment and a culture, not just with the work they do, not just with their peers, which by the way, all of that is amazing. But ultimately, and the Gallup organization will tell you this, the single main reason, the number one reason why people leave an organization or stay is because of their direct supervisor. It's because of the boss. They're going to tell you money, lack of opportunity. They're going to, oh, they're not doing pet insurance. Oh, I can't work from home. I don't have a pool table here, whatever it is. They're going to give you so many reasons. But the real reason is they don't like you as a leader, as a boss, as a supervisor. That's within our direct control. So I think the ultimate root answer of your question is I'm hoping that I'm doing it all the time, just in general, when I just have peers and I'm goofing off and I'm making money because I want to go and hang out at the club afterwards or hang out with my friends or whatever it is. But once you take on a leadership position, it's how can I make this thing better? How can I make people happy here? I got to get the results, but I think I can pull the levers and impact and influence people to get them to do the things that I need them to do that they might not have done on their own. Now, I think again, with a founder, you have to do it, right? With an entrepreneur, you have to do it or leave. When you're just a boss at an organization, I think there are some people that can choose not to. They can do some squirrely things there. They'll do stuff behind your back. They might move to a different department. They might actually leave the organization and work for your competitors. But I think at the end of the day, it is all about what can I do to keep you engaged? And a leader has to be thinking about that. If you asked me the same question, Chad, 30, 40 years ago, I don't think I would answer it that way. I think I'd be just saying, listen, man, these are our values. You got to stick to it or see you later, hit the road. Doesn't work like that because all the great talent will just laugh at you and they will in fact hit the road and they'll work for your competitor across the street. So I just think it's so different these days that, and I know this is controversial. It's an employee's world right now. We've got to revolve a lot of our, not necessarily our practices, but the way we act and behave around them. We've got to revolve it around them. And that's going to suck for a lot of people listening.
So I think you open up an interesting door, Jim. So let's talk about engagement that rocks, right? That's your new book, Engagement That Rocks. And I've been looking at our industry, or actually, well, the industry I operate in, but I was thinking about all of them. It feels like there's been some changes that have happened over the last, let's just say, 10 years. 10 years ago, it seemed like if somebody's out there talking, they were talking about their brand. They're all about the company, the company, the company. I'm a company man, that's or gal or person. And it feels like the shift has changed from, let's just say, more 30% company to 60 to 70% my personal brand. I am my brand. I know I'm moving on in 2, 3 years because people, especially in tech at least, there's a lot of migration that happens. You don't see a lot of long lasting seats and butts and seats. So let's talk a little bit about engagement and understanding how that shift has happened and that personal branding is a big deal now, right? But how do we maintain that balance of keeping maybe the personal brand congruent with the company brand? And how do we harness this to feed that?
Yeah, great question. So I think people are still focused on their personal brand. You don't hear it as much because I almost think it's implied at this point. The millennials started screaming about it. It went down to Gen Z. I think what you're going to ultimately see in Gen Alpha, I assume, is what they're saying is the new generation coming along. It's still going to be predominant because now it was, I need to put my personal brand into it. Now it's like price of admission. Of course, I should have that in addition to the company. So I think, maybe it starts in the onboarding, the orientation. I think you can still tell people about the company. I think you can talk about it and, spend a lot of time. The companies like a Chick-fil-A that will spend 2 days doing an orientation. You don't even get into the position till day 3. They dunk you quite a bit into the culture and you're either in that company or you're out. Like, they'll sift through it. There are brands that really spend more time and energy on values and purpose and mission and whatever it is that they have going on. I think you could still do that. But I think to your point, Michael, you have got to start leaning in. There has to be so much more what about me? Because if I'm sitting there, here's a great example. Let's say I come to work for you and you're droning on about the company and the history. And I hope it's exciting. I hope it's not this guy had some property and this girl had some money. We got together, we sell stuff. Like you're hoping it's sexy or it's cooler
To
than
an
that.
exit.
Then that's it. And we're done. And here, don't do these 10 things or you get fired. Right. So I hope people have really spent time on the story that people are going, I'm coming back for more, man. I'm here for day two. Like that, I get that. But if you're talking for 3, 4, 5 hours, like at some point, yes, I'm tipping my hat to the past. I'm going, good on you. That's awesome. But I'm also going, what about me? What about now? What about the future? So I think to some degree, leaning into it has to be really important. So, as part of that, what about me? It could be a variety of things. How much time during a shift that can you take off? How flexible are you in your schedule? In some places, like in food and beverage, it's a brick and mortar, it's four walls.
You have to be there.
You have to work there. But do you have flexibility that you can change your shift anytime you want to with anybody else? If you haven't put some platform in place, shame on you. I think all the time about technology. Back in the day, you catch somebody with their phone, that's a big deal. Now, you know what I would do? I really would do this. I would encourage people to have their phone with them at all times. I want them to use their phone. I want them on social media. Celebrity comes in, I want the buzz out there. Maybe you put some rules in there. I joked around like maybe you draw a circle somewhere on the floor. You can't use your phone unless you're touching the circle. And it's hilarious to see people over there trying to be on the phone. So you limit it, but you can tell them all day long to not have their smartphone with them, but they're going to have it with them anyway. So these are the types of things when somebody goes, my boss lets me use my phone on a shift, all of a sudden you've endeared yourself to them. So I do think that there has to be this aura of it's about them. What about me? Knowing full well you still have to implement things to get the business. We still have to make money unless you're in a nonprofit. Even nonprofits need to make money to put it back into the business. So I don't disagree with you. 30% might be a great one. I think when we start throwing stats around, you and I will make up
Well,
statistics.
I pulled
I
that
don't
one
know,
out of my
42%
ass. I
of the
just
time. Right, exactly. But I think that's probably right. That you know what, you can adjust it for people. There's no doubt about it, and still make it about the company and get them ginned up and excited about coming back on a regular basis.
This seems to relate to your keynotes on customer experience, where you talk about the primacy of personalization for the guest experience, right? Because they're being seen and felt. They are recognized as they walk into the business and engage. And with AI, the technology story right now in the industry is that AI is going to allow us to do more from a personalization standpoint than we could do before, right? Both from the having access real time to data, et cetera, as well as the capacity to do things that people wouldn't be there to do. What's your take on that, right? In terms of where we are right now in the restaurant industry for personalization?
I think the restaurant industry has always been and always will be about personalization. I mean, all day long. And the statistics that I get, and again, I used to sit on the certification governing board of the National Restaurant Association. So I see data all the time. And when I look at the big things that guests really care about, they really only care about service, product, those two big ones. They care ultimately about the value that they're going to get, and they care about the atmosphere that they're going to be put in. And they're not necessarily in that order. Like, first and foremost, they're going, I'm just coming in because I'm hungry. Product. But do you have an atmosphere, an environment that's different that I can't get anywhere else? Okay, that's another layer. The one that truly makes a difference, because I can copy those two, by the way. I can copy your product. I can knock you off. I can create an environment exactly like what you do. What I can't steal is your service, because that's predicated on human behaviors. That's the thing that people like the most. They think they want the other stuff, but service by a country mile trumps everything else. And then ultimately that produces value. And so much so, you look like the dude in the Maxell commercial, right? You remember that commercial where the
Yeah.
guy is blown away with the speaker? You line all those up and it's phenomenal. But at the end of the day, people want phenomenal service. So to your point, Chad, I think AI is going to help out. Technology is going to help out. Automation is going to help out when the robots ultimately are involved in doing some of the stuff. Okay, yeah. But it'll never, ever, ever take away from how you made me feel from a personalized, customized, individualized standpoint. And so to your point, I'm not sure everybody is thinking like that when it comes to employee engagement, the people that are actually making the donuts, but you can't. There's no way you can fake it by not doing that for the guest, the customer, the consumer, the end user. If you screw that up, all the other stuff is just, it's expensive window dressing. You're never going to get to nirvana if you can't get the guests to fall madly in love with you. If they're not coming back, if they're not spending more, if they're not talking about you positively, I'm not sure a great memory actually was created. I don't think the memory actually existed. And you've now, out of the thousand things that have to go right for a great experience, the light bulbs are working, the restrooms are clean, the food was hot. Yeah, 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 yeah. You do all of that. 997 things right. But I'm not coming back, which are the last three questions I ask on any survey. Are you coming back? Are you spending more? Are you going to talk about me positively? You can't do those three, you failed. So the ultimate of your question is you got to personalize, customize, and individualize the experience. And when you do that, we create an emotional attachment. You create loyalty, and I'm never going to leave you, man. Unless somebody is doing it a little bit better than you and maybe even cheaper than you, I'm with you for the long haul.
Um, Thinking about all this stuff and, you sent ahead some nice notes on the stuff you've done and the places you've been, and I'm trying to figure out how a guy who went from being the middle school teacher in charge of school suspension for 6 years
Yes.
went to the guy that lives outside of the box that promotes the wild card, use it or don't use it. But how'd you I mean, how'd you blow up into this? Because, the disciplinarian doesn't feel like you,
No.
right?
No, but I didn't do it the whole 6 years. I mean, that was the last 2 years. So, the real trajectory was I tried to play football in high school. I was the shortest guy in high school. I got my butt handed to me. I was like, "Okay, physical sports and activity isn't gonna be for me." So I could sing. I was a performance guy, and I was able, luckily, to get all my school paid for. I was on scholarship and got a music degree, and I could perform and I could direct, and it was very choral and church and opera music. Oh, my chair's falling down here. Yeah, you don't want that to happen. That's like, and I said, maybe I'm going to be a music teacher. Okay. But I really wanted to perform. And I'd been in community theater, probably 15 different shows. That was my way of just performing on stage and getting past this fear of people looking at you and whatever. That's part one. Part two is while I'm looking for my music directing job, I just take a summer job, really that leads me into the school year of being a substitute teacher. I got to make money. I'm looking around. I'm landscaping during the day, and I decide to become a middle school teacher, but I'm a substitute. So I'm going all over the place. And ultimately, when you not only show up and you follow the teacher's lesson plan, they love you and they hire you back. So now you get to pick your school, the classes that you will do. But for a while, I'd say for 4 months, the home ec teacher went out on maternity leave. So I'm the full-time sub teaching cooking, sewing, hygiene. It's hilarious. And again, my hair did not go up. I had a long ponytail at the time.
Right.
And during that time, I started to go back to work on my 4-year degree in children's education and history. But during that time, as I got to my 4th year, the school approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to run in school suspension?" Which I really didn't. I went from everybody's favorite substitute teacher to the most hated guy on campus. But I developed a unique
Didn't the guy
math
in Breakfast
program.
Club do some kind of similar rock? "You are mine," right?
Yes, he was like, that's right. Yeah, I was that guy. What was? Oh, it wasn't Breakfast Club.
It
Yeah,
was
with the
Breakfast
five guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I got a little side story about Breakfast Club one day too.
Okay.
But in school suspension, I don't know if they do this in every school, but there are 3 walls basically, and my desk was up against the back 4th wall. So they're all facing the thing. Most people would go in there and just fall asleep. They're individual little cubicles. I actually created a math program and forced them to do work. So they actually hated it more if they misbehaved in one class and had to come to mine. So I got some recognition over that, and they asked me to be full time doing that. It wasn't exactly the thing I wanted to do. But again, like any other school teacher, I needed to make a little bit of money. I took a summer job working at Hard Rock again because I had my long hair and it was rock and roll, and that's what I grew up on. I had worked at Olive Garden for 3 years at some point. So I had a little bit of some, food and beverage background as a host. And then the rest of the story I told you. I mean, once I got ensconced in hanging out with people that had piercings and tattoos and mohawks and colored hair, but yet they were the hardest workers, their attention to detail and sense of urgency and work ethic just it really it attracted me to say, I want to be like these guys. I don't even know if I fit in, and yet I wound up fitting in and then wound up taking over different responsibilities. So, I mean, it was more of a summer job goof than anything else, to be honest with you. But again, what I'm doing right now, if I wouldn't have had that background, I told you I'm pulling the lever of music, education, and hospitality. What I'm doing now needed all three of those for me to have the edutainment that I'm doing now. So the leap wasn't as hard as you think. It was a summer job, brother.
Love it. Love it. Chad?
Change management. You've talked about how you're not as much on, hey, I want to inspire you. I want to help you make actual change and give you things you can actually take to the bank and work within your team, and these things will happen. What's the key to identify, as you're an organization, what's the key to identifying what you actually can change?
Well, and I was alluding to it earlier. So I am a disciple of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly
Oh,
Effective People because I had a CEO who brought that to the organization. We all did exactly what was taught in the class, and then we hard rockized the heck out of that thing. I mean, we really bastardized what they were doing. I bought their materials, and I told Covey, I told the entire organization, we're going to be the Southeast chapter for you guys. You want to send people to get 7 Habit stuff, but we're going to teach it in the way we want to teach it. All the examples are going to be hard rock examples. All the leaders in there are hard rockers. And then I opened it up and started selling spots to be a revenue generating initiative, which you don't see from a training guy. And we had different companies and executives coming in to hang out with hard rockers to get the information. And the reason I set that up is that circle of influence, circle of concern example that I gave earlier is one of the greatest ways to manage and deal with change. That if you can just focus on the things that you can directly control, unless you're the top girl or guy, unless you're the entrepreneur, the founder that's implementing the change, change is going to happen. And everybody knows that. It's the old joke about death and taxes. Change is going to happen. And I love the subtlety of people that say, oh, it's just going to happen a little bit at a time. And some people say it's monumental depending on who's in charge. But you can't even predict in a lot of ways the type of change. But I've spent so much time talking about it with organizations. You can, in fact, lean into it. You could support it. You might actually be able to implement it before it actually happens if you're able to read the tea leaves of what's going on. But at the end of the day, that frontline manager or the frontline in our world server, bartender, dishwasher, whatever, they have no control over what's going on. So if I can get into their headspace and go, things are going to change for the better, for the worse, whatever it is, there's nothing you can do about it except whenever you want to do something about it. And the something about it is get in the game, become a trainer, help write materials, become a manager, ultimately a general manager, ultimately a director of operations. You want to be the president of the organization. That's when change that you want is going to happen. But other than that, it's about levels. So I'll have a fun, I'll do some music orientation. I'll do some band and brand analogies when I'm talking about being resilient. When things start to go sideways, when you can keep your cool, when somebody tells you no, and you're thinking, okay, no means not right now, but I'm going to do it anyway at some point. If somebody says you physically can't do it, you'll figure out a way to overcompensate for that. So I think resiliency and dealing with change is 100% possible, but it does depend on your level of influence. And right now, if you're the brand new guy and you just joined 2, 3 weeks in, maybe you don't have a lot to say and you just got to lean into it and deal with it. But ultimately, you want to make a change. It's about having those, like I said, areas of responsibility, and it will ultimately grow. And the things that you never could control, you now have a little bit more say so.
all right. I got some greedy questions here that I got to ask you. One, the vault.
The Hard Rock Vault.
I'm sure you get peppered by it all the time. What is the single most holy golden object in there that you can think of the top of your head? Because I know there's a bunch. What was the holy grail you saw in there touched? Was it McCartney's Hofner bass? What was it?
So I could say there's a couple. We have the original lyrics from Help. The Beatles wrote down. And again, a lot of times they didn't have real good sheet music around, so they were writing it on cardboard, on cereal boxes, whatever. We have obviously the way that the entire collection started. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but at some point, Eric Clapton hanging out in the London Hard Rock Cafe was in there all the time. He's sitting on a bar stool and he said, listen, I'm in here all the time. So he gave a guitar to the founders and said, can you just put it up on the wall and let people know this is my bar stool? So they laughed about it and they didn't put it up for like a week. And he came back in. He's like, "Where's my guitar?" He's like, "Oh, it's underneath the." And they're like, he's like, "No, I want people to know this is where I sit." They put it up on the wall, and a week later, a guitar case showed up with a guitar and said, "Mine's as good as his. Love, Pete," from Pete Townsend of the
Or
Who. And so
dueling
that went up.
banjos, so to speak, right?
So it's just people trying to, yeah, outdo themselves. And it was a goof. It all happened by accident. So when you can see those two guitars that started the collection personally from hard rock, that would be a big deal. When you see, some Fender that somebody played, or maybe even a guitar that was used on a specific video that you were a fan of. I'm trying to think of Novoselic guitar from Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nirvana. Things like that are pretty cool. Man, there are so many. I did a video one time for eBay with Hard Rock, and I wound up being able to put on a lot of those things. I was blowing into Elton John's harmonica. You had a Bob Dylan harmonica. You had a wig that somebody wore. Kerry King's from Slayer, his guitar. I wore a Gene Simmons outfit from Kiss,
Oh, Lord.
which I'm a little bit overweight. I mean,
Are
they
you
had
the
to
same
push my
height as
fat
him?
to get in there.
Yeah. Are you the same height as me?
Big old blocks of
Oh,
wood to step on. There's stuff like that it depends on if you're a fan of Michael Jackson or the Who or the Beatles or Stones or Elvis. There will be something in there that'll just absolutely blow your mind. And for other people, you can point to it and go, that's almost where rock and roll started. So, man, if I really had to pick, I'd say the two guitars that started the thing is probably more, personal for me than anything else.
okay. All right, another question. You have I'd say unusual fear of electrostatic shock.
Yes.
Vegas or Phoenix? What's the worst offender? Or is there another place I'm not thinking about? Because those are the places I get zapped every time, like, me and my socks. I hate that.
Mine is in
Oh,
Chicago, and I don't know why this is. I don't know. I've been in some rooms before, and every time I've got to touch the laptop, and I'm walking across anything, and then when it gets you the first time, I'm so nervous, and people are laughing about it. And now you can actually see the flash. You can sometimes see the connection between the metal. So even here in my townhome, if I'm doing clothes and I forget and I get zapped, every time I'm touching stuff with elbows, knuckles,
found
going to the
yourself. Yeah,
post
yeah.
office. I've never had a fear of anything, but I have a fear not of being shocked like by a power line. I'm just talking about little metal stuff. I get freaked out on that
A
stuff.
little annoying
Get through
zap.
Chicago.
Yeah. You don't expect it. All right. So I
Yeah.
got so we're landing a plane here. I promised you we wouldn't take the full hour. I think we did. So, oh well. But the things I took away from this, and I usually if you catch me doing stuff off screen, it's because I'm taking notes on some cool stuff that you said. And the stuff that really hit me most was one is, and this is a paraphrase, but be brave. I think what you shared is that, and it occurs to me that the things that people regret at the end of their life are all the things that they didn't do. That's the swings they didn't take, the girl they didn't ask out, all the things that they didn't do. Don't live with regret. I think
Yeah,
keep it up and
exactly.
rip it, dude. I think that's awesome. I love the idea that you say something to the effect of foster internal content creators. We have so many people that are born with phones in their hands that are living in our businesses that work there every day, and they have so much to offer if we just let them. I think that's a beautiful statement.
100%.
And I love the idea that you said work with people where they are. Make it about the team so the team can make it about the business. Is what it felt like what you were saying, and I love that
It
too.
is.
The one thing I wanted to nail down is a quote from the movie Fletch, but I don't know how tall you are. How tall are you?
5'6". I'm a short
5'6",
dude.
so you're 5
Well,
you're 5'6"
the
and
hair gives me
5'9"
an
with the
extra 2
hair,
inches.
right? Just like Fletch
Yes.
should be, right? Which I
Yes.
love. And then my last final thought here is Gorilla Glue is not a hair care product. Don't do that. I don't think Jim does.
No.
The
No.
and the thing I'm hearing the whole time I'm listening to you is in my head that played at my wedding is the song "Bless the Broken Road."
Mm.
You're a man of faith, you're a good man, and I think everything you share has a lesson in it, and I think that, one, every setback has a purpose, right? Dude, for the journey is so important. You live the fact that there's destiny through the connections that you make, and that you should have faith in your timing, you're where you're supposed to be now, and that there's joy in the destination, and there's joy in the journey, not just the destination. You gotta enjoy it the whole way through, and I think you represent all of that, and I hope I didn't take too big of a liberty with that, but as I was thinking about you and the roads you've been on and the roads you've inspired me to go on indirectly, I think you're a beautiful human being, Jim. It's an honor to watch you over these years and listen to you and take in the lessons that you share. You are culture that rocks. You're somebody that rocks. I mean, to great
Dude,
foundation.
if you that means a lot. I mean, that was a big miss. None of that's true, but, kidding.
Sorry.
Man, well, I will just say that, I could easily be one of these people that's influenced by the world around me and society. I worked, like I said, for some great organizations. My background was HR and training, so it's very people oriented. So that's the world that I live in. That's what I talk about. That's what I write about. I really do believe, people, their individual behaviors is what runs everything. And so it drives me from the things that I talk about personally. Without getting too haughty on the faith-based part, I just take a macro approach. I mean, I don't care what's going on in my life. I am one of these people that have worked, I worked being a Marriott Residence Inn housekeeper for 3 hours, and that was it. I walked off. I was like, "Yep,
Was
that's
your
not
jam.
for me." I tried to sell telephone prepaid cards for, I don't know, a week, and I was like, "Not for me." I don't spend any of my time and energy on stuff that I don't want to do, and I'm a long timer. Every time I've worked anywhere, it's been a long time purposefully because I feel like if you're going to do the work, do it your absolute best. I don't think it's just a Gen Xer in me. I think there are people who are driven like that. And those are the people that are ultimately going to be running things and starting things. But I do take a macro approach. I mean, I just think the time that we're here on this earth is so finite, it's so short. And no matter what I'm going through, I go, man, this too shall pass. I mean, it sucks right
Oh, oh
now, but
boy.
it'll get better 6 months from now or a year from now. I mean, I'll tell you, probably I will do one small little thing around philanthropy because I know you guys are doing that with your Back to Blue gig that you're doing with your nonprofit. I give away 5% of everything that I make, and I've always been like that to very specific philanthropic causes. There are three that I focus on right now. And there are times when it's tough, man. You're not making hardly any money, but that 5%, I don't care. I'm going to write it anyway, because if at all you're a believer in good things will happen to you, whether you're reading it from the book or that's just your mindset and what you're throwing out there to the universe. I happen, to have a faith approach. I know that it's going to come back tenfold. And sure enough, those checks are my favorite checks to write. And so my goal has always been I want to make as much money as possible, but it's because I want to give away as much money as possible. And good things happen. And I think if there were more people like that, man, this planet would be in a much better place. So
Amen.
I'm not trying to get too much on a hill for everybody, but listen, when I hear you say things like that, and it's just you and I talking right now, and Chad's in the room, it really, really means a lot to me. And if I had even the inkling of some influence in your life, man, that's what it's all about for me. It is that journey. How many people can I take with me to go on this positive mindset and then ultimately affect other people? So for you to say that, man, it really does mean a lot. And I'm honored to be on the show. I'm glad that you asked me, man. This is great.
We had to get the show in good enough shape to invite you. Like you're like my first guest. So I wanted to get. I'm like, we got to get our stuff down first. So as we wrap this up, uh, you do speaking gigs across the country for various different industries, and I wouldn't imagine your dance card's completely full. And if it is, how do people get in line? How do they find out how to have that amazing presence on stage or at their event? How do they go about that?
Yeah, I would say all roads lead to my website. It's knightspeaker.com. So it's my last name, com. That's only because somebody else has jimknight.com. And I don't want to pay all the money that guy's asking for. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me more than anything else. Right now, I am exclusively represented by a speaker bureau. So there are people out there hunting on my behalf. My dance card is not full. Speakers always want more. And again, mine isn't just for the financial part, it's the impact and influence. So if anybody's even thinking about bringing somebody in from the outside, like you said, I'm loud, I'm fast, I'm aggressive, I'm quite mobile. High energy is what I bring to the table. So that edutainment, I'm going to hit what you're looking for from an objective standpoint, but we're going to have a few yucks along the way as well. So, man, I'd just be honored if you're interested in anything like that. reach out and let's get a conversation started.
I was trying to do something.
You did.
I
It sounded
I
cool.
did, but I actually wanted to do this instead. It was more like the Jim Knight Rider thing. Like I was just
You know, a shadowy figure in the dark, dangerous world.
world, but I'm not going to blow it. I'm going to do a whole post production Knight Rider, but Jim Knight Rider.
Perfect.
ADHD is present and heavy in this brain here.
Yes, because I've never heard that before.
Never, never, never. I'm so unique. But dude, thank you, thank you, thank you. Our lesson of the day here is gratitude. Thank you, and thank people like you for being in the world, for putting that fantastic energy in there. I think life is a flywheel. Like we get into it, well, we get out of it what we put into it. Thank God people like you are making deposits every day. You
Thanks,
know,
man. That means a lot.
I love the idea of not being a armchair quarterback and screaming at the TV. It's you have no influence. Stop yelling at the TV unless it's fun for you.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
Jim, you're one of the good ones. Love to have you back anytime. I mean, you're just amazing. And where are you going to be speaking next?
Oh, I've got a lot. I mean, depending on when you're going to launch the
In the
show, I
next
leave.
2 months. Like, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm all over. I mean, I leave in a day and a half. 3 cities in 4 days. So
Wow.
Phoenix, Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll be in Buffalo. I'm all over the place. I do virtual sessions. So, and stuff comes up all the time. So whenever this actually drops, those could have been long in the past and there'll be
True.
something else new coming
That's
up.
true. All right. So we'll make this more evergreen content. We'll circle back with a list of what
Exactly.
shows
Perfect.
he has coming up. Well, Jim Knight, it's been amazing. Chad, anything before we wrap up here?
So really enjoyed our conversation, Jim. Awesome getting to know you.
Same here, man. Rock on. You guys are fantastic.
All right. So everybody, please give this another listen. If you didn't get it the first time around, there was a lot that Jim shared with us. And I'm hoping he'll want to come back. I just got to get enough clicks on it to make him want to come back again, probably. Just kidding. But Jim, you have a fantastic day. Enjoy your part of Florida. We'll enjoy ours. And I look forward to running into you in the field. And hopefully it's not 15 years till I get to see you in person. Let's actually convert this conversation to let's get together, have coffee or somewhere nearby. Or I'm putting
You
out to the
got it.
world. I want Jim to go on kayaks with me on the river with our manatees and do something that rocks. So I'm just putting
I love that. I
we
love
will
that.
manifest.
For sure.
All right. All right, everybody. This has been the ChatGTM podcast. I don't know what number, but we'll number it later. But we are thankful for you as our audience and bringing us into your house and being part of our community. Have a blessed day.